not tomorrow in the morning because there's open book. Well, I mean, you can find another spot. Oh, yeah, open book for people to come in to talk about.
Can you hear us now, Mary?
Not our not our open book. This is for just taxpayers to come in. Right. Got it. Right. Until the 26th.
There's Max. I'm going to allow Max to go. He's there.
She's muted.
Corona took place. So tired of Zoom meetings. Mary is not in this meeting.
Thursday. Work.
I think Zoom is overwhelmed. The amount of people using it, and I don't think their system is. I find it was, when we first started all this Zoom stuff, it was okay, you could get by, but then, now there's a lot of lag time.
Right. Oh,
And it's so hard to, you can't, if you're facilitating, you can't direct because people don't hear what you say. Like if three people are talking at once, the facilitator, can't choose one person. And there's about this 4-second lag, and I found that's the human's level of patience.
Okay.
And if it's silent for 4 seconds, everyone starts talking.
Right, exactly. Although as coach, you can put everybody on mute.
Right. I don't know why she's off. No, she's off. Christy Yanish said no audio. Not respond.
I think it's a sign in on my phone and post it out there.
Okay, I see the,
Mary's here.
Good thing I live close.
I see,
Thinking, I bet you she's just on her way here.
I don't know why it would work last week and not this week.
That happened to me the other day.
I have that right in my house.
There's Max.
Okay, hi everyone. Sorry for the delay.
you have that recorder on.
I don't. Should we just?
It must have to be on the 6 weeks.
We have a mess in my house.
All right, we're live. And we're recording.
All right. And a little late, I will call the meeting of May 18th order. And our first item on the agenda is roll call. Tony.
Dave Anderson? Here. Carl Broberg? Here. Jennifer Mazias? Jennifer Mazias? Mayor McGrath?
Here.
Tom Nymus,
Here.
Aaron Spears Novacek,
Here,
Laura Tulowitzki.
Here.
Next, on to the pledge.
Still can't hear anything. To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we'll move on to the approval of minutes. And we're looking at the minutes from both the April 13th and the 21st.
I move
Can I-
approval of the April 13 and April 21, 2020 minutes of the Common Council.
Okay, motion by
I'll second.
Karen Scott, and a second by Tom Nymus.
I'm just letting everyone know, the audience can't hear us yet.
Okay, I wondered that when I had signed on to the other link. The first time.
I'm going to try, well, someone just logged off. Max, can you hear us? Can we hear you, Max?
So there's definitely some issue this time that we didn't have last time with the Zoom connection.
I had no problem last time.
Yeah, I didn't either. So, do we need to pause? Did we?
That wasn't the problem.
Really?
Usually it doesn't get hacked like it has been before, not here, but it has been hacked.
So we do have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion, questions, comments on the minutes? Seeing none, I will ask for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And that motion carries. Should we go ahead and proceed, Scott? We need to pause, do you think?
If you want to give us 2 minutes here to see if we can figure out what's happening.
That's all in, that's in. And when I tested it, the sound.
Oh, now we can hear you, Matt.
Okay, I think they can hear now.
Well, I told Max to say something because I unmuted him.
The question is, can he hear us?
But that's what I just asked him.
Well, if needed, maybe we'll have to skip his agenda item if we can't hear him. Well, it sounds like we can hear him.
No, I tried calling on my cell too, and the cell line doesn't come through. We'll just head over in person.
Okay, there we go. All right, well, we'll carry on and see what other issues we run into as we go. Okay. Next on the agenda is approval of monthly expenditures via roll call vote. I have never done this item, so is there some information?
Well, yes, there are 3 members that typically review the expenditures, but because we did not review last month, we were able to get them all completed in time for the meeting, because we had a considerable stack. So if it would be okay, we would have to postpone until our next meeting when we would have an opportunity to complete it that.
That sounds like an excellent option.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for your time going through that considerable step. So next, we'll move on to public comment. Is there anyone here with any public comment? Seeing none, we will move on. Next item, mayoral announcements, proclamations, and appointments. So, I have no appointment to the Plan Commission yet. That is a vacant seat at this time for a citizen. If anyone knows of anyone that you think would be good as a citizen member of the Plan Commission, please, encourage them to talk with us and fill out an application. Share any ideas that you have. I'd be happy to reach out to anyone that you think would be good. As far as proclamations, because this meeting was postponed a week due to the special election last week, the timing is a little off on our proclamations. And so two of our groups that we like to recognize at this time of the year have already had their weeks of official recognition. And that is the National Skilled Nursing Care Week and National Police Week. So both of those happened last week, even though you're just seeing the proclamations for those now. And then upcoming this week is Emergency Medical Services Week. And so I'm recognizing all of those with proclamations, and I'm just talking about those for a minute because I think they deserve some extra recognition. This year, with this pandemic going on, those three groups in particular are seeing a tremendous amount of risk along with the jobs that they normally do. Their jobs are normally extremely important, and this year it's really taken on an added dimension. And these folks are putting not only themselves at a higher risk, but also their families. And I really just want to acknowledge that extra level of risk that they're taking and, voice some appreciation for that. The next proclamation, again, there's an adjustment to this. This is the Week of the Young Child, normally at this time of the year. And again, that has been postponed so that they could make some adjustments in how that is celebrated. And so the Week of the Young Child this year will actually be June 1st through the 5th. And we are going to do sort of an adapted version of what we normally do. Normally the kids all come to City Hall and we read the proclamation and hand out treats and celebrate in person. And this year I'm working with the school to do a curbside pickup of a treat here so they could still come to City Hall and get a treat. And I think I'll do a video reading of the proclamation that they can share in their newsletter then. And we, it's a wonderful celebration of our youth and our showing of support of early childhood education. This year, for the first time, we're going to be honoring our Washburn High School graduates with a proclamation. And I thought that it would be appropriate to do that again this year to help to celebrate the graduating class of 2020 who is not having a traditional year in recognition and celebration. They're missing out on so much. And so I put together a proclamation, and I think that it would be one that would be good to carry on into the future too. I think it's really nice to acknowledge our graduating class. And so with that, those are the extent of the proclamations for this month. I'm not going to read the whole proclamation, but obviously this item is near and dear to me this year in particular, as our youngest is graduating from high school this year. And we watched a special over the weekend that was put together for the graduates. It's just really heartbreaking. And, all the wonderful things that these kids have done and missing out on the senior trip and the awards night. It just goes on and on. But I do want to announce that the community is going to put on, it's being called the Castle Guard Commencement Convoy. On the day of graduation, which will be June 7th, it'll come through town, and it'll be immediately followed by a curbside pickup of their diplomas. And so we're hoping that people can join in decorating downtown. The route will be posted on Facebook, and maybe we can put it on the city page as well. It's going to come from West End, up through downtown, up Central Avenue to the football field. And so hopefully we can get the word out enough that the community can really get involved and help celebrate in that way. Did you get it, Karen? So the graduation video will be on YouTube at 2 p.m. that day, on the June 7th, and then at 4 p.m. will be the lineup of the convoy. And so that'll come through town shortly after that. Yeah. So one little thing that the community can do. Okay, moving on to discussion and action on proposed survey map for block 89 of the original town site of Washburn, affecting tax IDs 33493 and 33494. Christie Yench, petitioner.
If I can add, Christie Yench is on, but cannot hear us. She said that she was going to come down and would be here in a few minutes.
Oh, okay,
And
sure.
that was a couple minutes ago that she said that.
No, she said that she can hear now.
Oh, she can?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Oh, Jen said she can hear me speak. That's interesting. Okay.
I don't know if this helps a little bit too. So we can proceed with this item then?
Allow to talk. Christie, are you there?
I am.
Oh, good.
Excellent.
Hey,
I make a motion to approve the reconfiguration contingent upon the taxes that are paid in full for both properties.
Second that motion.
Okay, motion by McGrath.
and if I can just say, Kim has had a conversation with Scott, I believe, and she told me that her taxes were paid.
Okay, hold it. And then one more second. So we have a motion by McGrath, a second by Novacek, and is there any discussion? Questions for Christie, since she's on the line? Everything looks to be in order, and so I don't see any issues with this. I don't see any being brought up. So with that, we'll just move to a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent.
Love that, thank you.
Yes, you are welcome. Enjoy your bigger backyard.
Yes, thank you very much. Good evening.
You too, Christie. Okay, on to the next item, discussion and action on request to extend driveway width. Clayton Russell is the petitioner, and that is on tab 3. So when I looked at this, it made sense, but my question was, is this the only way to address the issue? You know, by expanding the driveway? Because if we're going to make an exception for someone, I really wanted to be sure that it was necessary and that that would be really worthy of an exception. I'm not one for making exceptions just because someone asked. So I called and talked with Clayton today, and he explained what had happened with the neighbor. Apparently, when the neighbor added on to their house, there's now a sump pump that pumps out the basement of the addition that drains into this little, piece between the two properties. And it is, and I can appreciate this because we have a similar situation going on, but it's wet to the point where you can't even mow.
Whatever. But anyway,
It's wet to the point where it's difficult to even mow because the grass gets so wet there. And so he had C&W Trucking come out, and their proposed proposed solution was to literally put like 2 feet of gravel in here so that it would just help drain the water. And in essence, it would just be extending the driveway. And it would only be gravel with nothing on top of it. You know, also, we of course want to pay attention to how many impervious surfaces are happening. So I was satisfied after talking with Clayton that this seemed to really be the only answer that would work to help solve the situation that was created inadvertently by the construction. So with that, I would look for a motion either way on this item.
Motion to approve?
The second.
Motion by McGrath, second by Broberg, and,
I'm just, oh, sorry.
yeah, did you have a question?
I do, actually, yeah. I'm curious if this is based, this problem started with the sump pump next door, has been addressed with the neighbor. Or drainage staying on their property or making its way properly to public sewer and drainage. I mean, I know a lot of alleys have this problem, we do too, so.
My understanding is that nothing was done, you know, illegally or improperly, it's just an effect of putting it in. So I guess,
I looked at the properties there, and they both slope to this one spot where he's talking about filling in. So you fill that in and slope it back and run out and down. When I looked at it, it made sense to do that.
Can I add? Bob and I briefly discussed this on his last week with us, and he had said that he was out on site to discuss with Clayton and felt that this was really the best option to keep the drainage from infringing. And yeah, there was no other way around it.
okay, great. Okay, so there's a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion or questions? I believe Clayton was going to try to be on the line too, if there were any questions. But seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Excellent, thank you very much. All right, moving on to the next item, we have discussion and action on the disposal of the fire department brush truck. And that's in task 4. Did we have anyone here who wanted to talk about this?
Will we answer some questions?
Let's see. Does anyone have any thoughts on this? As far as my understanding goes, this is one of the options that we have when we're disposing of a truck is to offer it to a nearby municipality for a negotiated price. And that appears to be what everyone is favoring in this instance. So I guess we don't need you to come up if there's no questions. And so I would look for a motion one way or the other here.
I would recommend that the disposal of the fire department brush truck be set at a minimum price at $2,000 and that it be negotiated with the town of Oak Point.
Okay, motion by
Second.
Karen, second by Carl. Is there any discussion?
I think in light of the town of Oak Point's tragedy in terms of a new fire station being burned shortly after it was constructed, I think this is a good community activity we have something that we're not using, they have something that they need. From my perspective, I see it as a win-win and it's neighborly.
Excellent. Anything else? All right.
I'm sorry, I guess I do, this is Laura.
Laura, go ahead.
I'm just curious, just reading through the letter here from Mike. Here's one to let Madeline Island make an offer. Do you have anything to offer? Is it still, I'm sure there's a minimum price set for a reason, but because they wrote it, I just wanted to address it.
Yeah, I don't know. I just talked to the fire chief over there a couple times, and they were pretty happy with that price and everything. So
Okay, thank you.
that's all I can tell you about it.
All right, very good. Anything else? All right, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. All right, the next item is discussion and action on resolution 20-008, approving the submission of the DNR recreational trails program grant application for a portion of the biking ATV snowmobile trail in the city of Washburn. And that is under tab 5. I know this has been a long time in the works, and we had planned on submitting this last year, I believe, but there were some real tricky issues with the ownership and the research that it took to get to the bottom of that took an extended period of time. And so a lot of work has gone into this. Apparently, we are merely the applicant. We do not have to put out any money for this. It looks like it's being matched between cash and labor from some volunteer groups. I'm assuming possibly the Snowmobile Alliance or the North Coast Cycling Association.
This is Cycling Association.
Cycling Association, excellent. And they have worked hard on this. I think that if anyone has been down the trail, everyone who has been on there would agree that it does need some rehab in spots. And so I don't see any issues with this item, and I will look for a motion to approve. So moved.
Second.
Motion by McGrath, second by Goldberg, to approve the submission of the DNR grant. Any questions or discussion?
It's specifically to sign the resolution as well.
Okay,
That is part of the grant submission, is to include a resolution from the body that is submitting the application.
okay, so the motion is okay as is, since that's a part of it?
Sure.
Excellent. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, that'll be a nice improvement on the trail. Next is a discussion and action on approval of contract with Dollenbach, Anich, and Whitman, SC, for municipal attorney services with Matt Kennedy as the primary counsel. And that is under tab 6.
Move to approve the contract.
A motion by Grover, I'll take a second by Nivus. And is there any question on that contract or discussion?
Just one thing that I didn't notice before, Scott. The firm name is Onich, Wickman, and Lindsay. Same firm, but different name.
Okay, so with that correction to the name of the firm. Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent, thank you. And welcome back on board, Max.
Thank you.
And moving on to alcohol licensing matters. Discussion and action on request to reduce alcohol license fees due to COVID-19. Scott, we need to take these as two separate items. This first is just the request to reduce the alcohol license fees.
Yes.
So a letter came in recently with a request from Dan Roman, who is the Ashland and Regional County representative on the Tavern League. And on behalf of all of the businesses that need to update their licenses. I think they're looking for a little relief. Not only were most of these businesses closed for an extended period, now that they are able to reopen, I believe they are going to see a significant decrease in their revenues. And so I think that I would like to see us support our small businesses in whatever way that we can. Obviously, this has an impact on our budget, though, and our revenues. Scott had provided us with some figures regarding that impact. So the total that is listed here is $6,650 in revenue. Now that includes two different types of licenses. It includes operator licenses as well as alcohol licenses. And so in talking this through with Scott and some others, it makes sense to me that the operator licenses would perhaps still be in effect as is, because these are licenses at $35 a piece that go to an individual for a 2-year period, giving them the ability to serve alcohol. Is that correct?
Yes.
Whereas the alcohol licensing for sales at the different types of establishments, is for 1 year period, and it's a more substantial fee for those establishments where you're consuming alcoholic beverages on premises, especially. So, in my mind, I would like to see that separated out a little bit so that we don't completely lose all of that revenue, and because it doesn't all specifically pertain to this period of time. I'm hoping that, by the second year of this 2-year operator licenses, there wouldn't be as much of an impact. And at $35 a piece, I'm hoping that that's still, doable. Although some of these establishments do pay that for the people who work at their establishment, but that would be something that, they could take care of individually if needed. Karen?
I have a question. Of the 60% is the licensing for sale and consumption versus operator? Is it 80-20 or?
You're going to have about $2,000 for operator licenses, and then about $4,500 for alcohol cigarette licenses.
So based on what you've been talking about here, 2,000 would continue potentially for the license for the operators. What we're talking about is approximately 4,600.
Or a percentage of that. Yeah.
I just wanted to get that in.
Yep.
Yeah.
So for the period of time, say 6 to 8 weeks of businesses being closed, that's approximately, 15% of the year, 20% of the year. So that period is just gone. So alcohol licensing fees for this year,
What about the 2-year license?
not including the operator licenses, correct?
Nope, not including the operator license.
Is there a second to that motion?
Also,
Second by Anderson. Any other questions, comments, discussion? All right.
Could we just walk through real quick
Yeah.
what those numbers will look like?
Sure, Laura.
What we're really voting on?
So that would be approximately 2,000 still coming in for the operator, like $2,300 approximately.
For the licenses.
Yeah.
So we would be down about a third of our revenue in that line item. I definitely see that as an investment in our businesses. If we don't do what we can to support them, we're just going to be losing out on future revenues anyway. So I definitely would like to see us do something, whatever we feel that we can do and not have it impact our budget.
So what would the individual license be?
It's $35 per, but the total in the number of licenses that we would be permitting is approximately $2,000. So our revenue would be like $4,300 instead of $6,600, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Well, I'm wondering if that helps enough. That's all. Well, as far as for any individuals to raise enough money in tips without enough people in these establishments, but also about just thinking of if there's going to be a lot of new licenses needed, or if there are certain people that can't or won't work in public places during a pandemic, if the cost is going to be more than they can really handle. I mean, how low can we go? That's what I want to know.
So, Scott, do people normally, or do we require them to pay this upfront in one chunk, or can they split it up into installments?
They normally pay this at once. So you're talking the operator licenses?
No, the beer sales.
The alcohol licenses have to be paid upfront, otherwise we really don't have any recourse if they don't.
So we couldn't do, if we gave them, like we're talking, 50% discount now and then do an installment, we couldn't do like a payment plan with them, that'd be.
I would advise against an installment plan. I mean, if you want to go lower, that's your choice, but I prefer not to make it more complicated.
The other scenario I was thinking of, and maybe I didn't explain it well, is if you take off the if you reduce the amount by 20% because of the closure, and then you took 50% of what would be remaining, that would be a little bit less than 50 total, I guess.
The wording, I think, is what we need for a motion. Maybe. How would you amend it if you have the wording for the 20%?
I think you may be trying to make this overcomplicated for the wrong
That could
money
be, yeah.
involved, and the administrative burden that's going to take to manage it.
Sure.
So I think the motion is simple to execute, and doesn't create an administrative burden.
And when I talked with Dan today, and I mean, I think he's going to be happy with whatever we can do. It sounded like there wasn't a very specific ask; it was just a general. So I think 50% is a very reasonable.
Yeah, you talked to him, so I'm satisfied.
All right. Any other questions, comments, discussions? Otherwise, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. And we have introduction to the annual alcohol and beer garden license renewal applications. And I think I must have skimmed over that and did not realize. So Scott, can you just fill us in a little bit on this?
I'll defer to Tony.
So as part of the process for renewal of alcohol licenses, number one, we need to publish that in the paper to give any creditors the ability to see and contact them or us that they owe money to that organization, that business owes money. So that's one thing that this motion is doing, and then setting forth the process of then going through the reapplication, which one would be publishing in the paper. 2 would be having the chief of police go and inspect the establishments. And then we would come up with the final fee, and then that fee would be paid before June 30th, and then we would issue their license to them, starting June 1st. I'm sorry, July 1st. And all of the people or businesses that have requested or submitted applications are listed in this tab.
I make a motion to move the process forward.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Rath, second by Ms. Rath. Any questions, comments, discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Very good. Tony, you may proceed. That is it for action items, and our next item is a council training on open meeting and open record laws. And are you ready, Dan?
Sure.
All right, anyone who's watching online, feel free to turn us off because you'll probably be bored by this, but you're welcome to watch.
So Scott had asked, since, especially in light of all the other trainings being canceled and everything, that I just give a general overview of what I see as issues that council members need to be aware of.
Do you mind standing at the podium and share the microphone?
Turn it on.
I couldn't hear with this. Is that better? Can you hear me? Is that better?
Get in there. I mean, we can hear, okay,
All right.
I just don't know about it online.
Yeah. So I just wanted to get together highlights of issues that I see and main questions that I get representing all public bodies and municipalities. So I included in the packet here a Attorney General kind of 101 guidance issues that it comes up with the main topics that come up in public records and open meetings questions. A lot of this guidance that's in here is related to responding to open records requests, which actually asks that you guys don't do by yourselves. If you get any requests, if Scott gets any requests, it's best to have that streamlined process go through Scott to respond to any of these. So as far as you determining whether a request, whether a certain document should be released or not released, those are things that should come through Scott and not directly in line with you. So the main aspect for open records, public records law that you know is what is a record and what do you need to keep. In the digital age that we're in, it's very easy to create a record that you need to hold on to. Any communication, correspondence that you have between yourself and someone else related to any city work is a public record. You need to keep that, whether it's a text, an email, a piece of paper that you write down and hand it to someone else. Those are all public records that need to be saved. I don't know if any of you take notes during a council meeting, but your individual personal notes that you take to get ready for a meeting or anything else, those are not records if they're only for yourself. But as soon as you hand that note to someone else, it becomes a correspondence, and then you need to keep that. We do have a record retention schedule. I believe correspondence you have to keep for 1 year. My advice is just don't delete anything off your phone, don't delete text messages, don't delete emails, anything like that. We do have council email addresses. I don't know how well those are being used, but we do have those for record retention. If you do get emails on your personal email, just make sure you don't delete any of those that have to do with city business. Also, if and when your time is up as council members, you should have some way, if those are on your personal devices, on your email, on your cell phone, you should have some way to preserve those even after you leave, because you are still subject to the open records laws after your time is done being a council member for records that you created while you were in office.
Max, quick question.
Yep.
This is only for back and forth communication, so if we're getting junk mail in that email box, I can delete the junk mail.
If it has to do with city business, you should still keep it.
If it's someone trying to sell a service to us or some, like literally,
That is still a record.
is it?
Yes, so those shouldn't be deleted. You can move them to a junk. But if it has to do with city business, it is a record. So let's say hypothetically, someone makes an open record request for any solicitation to or from a city official for this type of business equipment. That would fall within the scope of that, and that is a record.
So
Yes.
put it in junk mail?
Yes.
Got it.
And rather than deleting it. Any other questions just as far as that initial, it's essentially presumed that everything you do that relates to a city or city business is a record. Like I said, if there's ever a question, a record request comes in, and you think, oh, I sent this text to my friend about something that was happening in the city, is this a responsive record? That's where Scott and I can look at it and make that determination. There are ways to prevent disclosure if it's some personal information, but again, that's a balancing test and some gray area there that is best to assume everything is a record. Just keep it. As far as, I know, Tom, you at least don't have email. So you have said before, you do all your communications face to face. Any type of verbal communication, anything like that is not a record. You don't need to keep a list of everyone that you talk to for city purposes. It is, again, just these records that are created in conducting your city business. If a record request comes in, there's no requirement that anyone creates a record to comply with that. So any request, like identify everyone who you talked to about this project, that's not something that would have to have a response to it, unless there were those writings that were actually written down. So those are the main things to think about for open records. For open meetings, yes, Karen.
I had a question about
Yeah.
Open records. Explain a little bit, I'm looking at 9, B2, A, B, and C, in terms of personnel issues.
Yes.
I am part of the personnel committee. We are in the beginning process of advertising and looking at candidates for the public works director. Is that whole process available under the public records statute?
Most of them are presumed available, yes. Oftentimes, if it's during the application process, we wouldn't release those names until after the application or the job had been granted.
Okay.
For places of public employment and these positions, the statutes make it so that the top 5 finalists, 5 individuals are presumed to be finalists, and those people's names are public record. If there are more than 5 applicants, individuals who are not finalists, you may or may not have to disclose that information in their names. But at least once we get up until those top 5 individuals, those are all public information.
But not
But-
until positions?
Yes,
Okay.
and that would be just and that's again one of those, if that request comes in, we consult with Scott and I and we can get to that, but to determine whether that should be released at that time. But just as far as it goes for negotiating and deliberations of whom to hire, it's best in those types of applications not to get those names out before the decision is made. And case law supporting those, withholding of those records until after the hiring has been done.
And
Yeah.
a follow-up question, what about the process of checking with references, which I'm doing on behalf of the committee? My notes on those calls that are considered public record?
If they're your personal notes and you're just using them for your information, those are not public records. But if you take those notes and you show them to other people in the personnel committee, then those become public records. So if it's just for you to have a list of ABC talking points that I want to talk about at the meeting, that doesn't become a record. Until and unless you show them to someone.
In a closed session.
It is still a record. The policies and the considerations for why you went into closed session can weigh in favor of either disclosing or not disclosing these records, but it is still a record at that point. So it's kind of a multi-step here, as number 9 says. Is it a record?
Right.
That first question there is where if it was just your personal notes, no, it would not be a record, so you'd stop this right there.
All right.
And with those people who apply for public, presumably know that they have the potential to have their information more accessible to the public, just like all of you should. Assume that that's available in these positions. Any other questions? What is a record, what you need to hold on to? So then the second issue that comes up is with the open meetings law and requirements in meeting with complying with open meetings law. We are in a bit of an with open meetings laws are either a walking quorum, which is when there are maybe 2 people meeting here, 3 people meeting over here, where they don't all necessarily meet together. The one intermediary is going between them and discussing things amongst them as a group. That isn't allowed here. So let's say you aren't able to go outside of the meeting and discuss amongst small groups of you and have one person going from group to group to get a consensus or to work together on government business. That's not allowed. You are allowed to go out and talk one-on-one with other council members and say, hey, what do you think about this issue? But then you can't go and report to another council member. Oh, so Karen says she's on this side. Dave says he's on this side. Where can I get your vote? That type of conduct isn't allowed. As far as when you're meeting, it's a small town. We all see each other. We all run into each other. If it's a chance social gathering, it is presumed that that is not for government purposes. So let's say we're all downtown when homecoming happens and there's 5 council members there together. That's not going to be a violation of the open meetings laws unless someone could overcome that presumption that you then start talking about city business. That's contrasted with right after a meeting. Let's say we're all standing outside here, or 5 people go down to the snug. If it's directly after a meeting, it is presumed to be talking about city business. So I haven't seen it that there's a quorum, but I know oftentimes after meetings, people stay around and chat for a little while. If there are 5 people in that chat, you can't talk about any city business against doing that after meetings. Some other areas have run into trouble there where it's kind of the tradition to either talk outside or go to the bar afterwards, and a few people go to the bar and have a drink, and even if you aren't talking about city business, then it's presumed to be, and that has potential liability for individual members and for the city as well.
So you just have to keep that less than a quorum?
Yes, yep, it's only a violation if there are sufficient number of individuals to make.
What about a negative quorum?
So yes, if that's another issue, if there are certain things that require let's say, a supermajority. So you need 5 out of the 7 council members to vote on this one issue. If you're discussing that issue and you have 3 people together, although they wouldn't be a quorum for the majority of it, they would be a negative quorum and would be able to defeat that action of the city government. So in that instance, that would be an illegal meeting if those people got together and discussed city business that they could defeat through a negative quorum like that. Most issues that come up with the council's decision-making are a simple majority, so that's a rare occurrence, but it is one to consider. So we do advise, if there's more than 2 people, more than in an area, either make sure you're not talking about city government or just disperse and do one-on-one conversations elsewhere. With the, again, technology that we have, be conscious of replying all to group emails. if there's a group email that's sent out and a quorum of individuals are CC'd on that email, just getting the email doesn't constitute doing city business. But if one of those members replies and commits to any position of the city, that could be a violation of open meetings laws. As far as, there are a lot of technical requirements with notices and with closed session in that. When those issues come up and they're actually in a convened meeting, I can answer any questions you have on those now, but typically Scott or I would be able to guide through that process when that comes up. Those are the main things that I like to say to look out for. If there are any other questions on open meetings, I'm happy to answer. Yeah.
Yes, I have a question about voting in closed session. It's 3A under 2. I guess it's 3A. I was confused about what kind of votes can one take in closed session? Or can you not take a vote in closed session?
There are very rare circumstances when that can occur. Off the top of my head, I am not ready to tell you when we could take those votes. Typically, the process is you have the deliberations in closed session, and then you reconvene in open session and you make that vote on the issue that was at hand. If there is a closed session issue that comes up where that was questioned whether we wanted to do that, I would have to do specific research on those issues.
So the rule of thumb
is that there can't be any binding decision made in closed session.
So all votes should be open session?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else? All right, well, hopefully you guys don't get in trouble.
All right, then I have a question, because as long as you say that, would you care to share with us some kind of real scenario where any kind of accusation could be brought or forfeiture of, say, $50 or $300? Are these? I'm just wondering how, how often it happens.
Yeah.
Who has to bring it to someone's attention and who?
So the likelihood is that if any council members violate an open meetings or open records law, you're not going to be individually responsible for it. There is a statute that allows a forfeiture for that. You had $25 to $300. But the biggest concern is if someone brings an action against the city for failure to follow, or any of you on behalf of the city, for failure to follow the open meetings or the open records law, and they're successful on that, the biggest teeth to this is that the city has to pay that individual's attorney fees for bringing that action, which those quickly outpace any other monetary damage that is applicable under this. So yes, there is a chance that individual council members could be held liable or have to have a forfeiture, but that really, I would say, would only come up in a blatant, intentional violation of the open records laws. So let's say you specifically destroyed records because you went behind someone's back and did some nefarious conduct that involved the city. That may subject an individual to potential forfeitures. Most commonly what happens is someone makes an open records request, council member maybe didn't look back at their texts and they received a text from this person that the request was requesting these correspondence from. We inadvertently don't provide all of those records, but the requester knew, hey, I know Laura texted this person about this issue, but we didn't give them that, then they could bring an action in court. If that record existed, then the city would have to pay for their attorney's fees, as well as there are other monetary penalties for that too, that the city would have to pay.
Yeah, that helps. To have substance behind the warning.
Yeah.
To understand
All right. Seeing that all our business is taken care of,